Greg, Gary, Happy New Year. Thanks for doing this kind of impromptu. I sent out an email yesterday. I thought it was important to, what was happening in Venezuela to discuss. And I appreciate you both making yourself available on Sunday afternoon, January 4th, 2026.
Thank you, Mike. Glad to be here, and Happy New Year to both of you guys.
Yes, thank you.
So let's kick off. I read an article yesterday, a Substack article by Tracy Schuchart, who I've had on the show before, and I know I'm paraphrasing some of it, but she was giving her analysis of what she thought Venezuela was all about. And Gary, I know you had a chance to look at it. What were your thoughts on it? And what did you think when you read it?
Well, it was an interesting article because no one's quite put it the way she has. She states that anything like this is going to have the Pentagon behind it, that they're going to lay out the plans, that they have an agenda. And it wasn't so much the oil, but the oil was a cover story so that the Trump supporters would understand. And her points were that we have these foreign powers in our hemisphere. First of all, Russia, who has troops on the ground. They have their missile defense system. They have military aircraft, and that's in our hemisphere, 1,200 miles from Miami. Secondly, China has captured the mines that are producing these minerals that we've got to have. And China has gone into Venezuela and has actually made a deal at the mines. And even though there's an embargo in place, they've been able to ship the rare earth minerals back to China through various means. And then third, Iran has set up a factory to build drones in Venezuela. And all three of these are threats to American hegemony. And so her point was that this was all organized by the Pentagon. Trump's just going along with with their recommendations, but the cover story that it's about the oil was a little more palatable.
Oil and drugs, right, Gary? Because drugs was the other.
Yeah, drugs. Yeah, and Craig and I agree on this. Drugs don't really come from Venezuela. They're a real small amount. They come from Colombia and Peru and these other places. So this drug dealer story that Trump is talking about, that is just a cover story. In fact, the small amount of drugs that come out of Venezuela go to Europe, not to the U.S. These small boats he was blowing up. There's no way they're going to make it to the American coastline. That's silly. But where they were going was to Trinidad, and then from Trinidad they shipped the drugs to Europe. So the gist of the matter was it was really a Pentagon affair. They needed to get Russia, China, and Iran out of our hemisphere, as opposed to the oil.
Well, I thought the other thing that was interesting about it, and I want to get your guys' take on it, is in the article it was referencing the Pentagon, the threshold of threat, and when it reaches a certain threshold, whatever that criteria is, and then it's put in front of the president, and the president basically signs off on it, and then they sell the narrative. Hence, the weapons of mass destruction that was referenced in the article. And that's a threat because of what you just said with Russia, Iran, and China all being so close to United States soil because the drones that Iran was making there could touch Florida. They could reach.
That's correct. And the other example they used with Iraq, it was oil because Iraq was in the center of the massive production of oil that comes out of the Middle East, but not so much in this scenario. And I'm not necessarily agreeing with her, but that's basically what her thesis was in her article, which was interesting because it's a different angle, and I think worthy of considering at least.
Well, and the other thing too, and Craig, I want to get your take. I think it was referenced in that article, or I read it somewhere else, that the refining capabilities, it would take several years, if not longer, to get it up to speed of where it needs to be to properly refine that oil.
And $10 billion in investment. That did come from that article.
And the money. Yep. And so the $10 billion, I forgot about the money, the $10 billion. And would American companies be willing to go in there with the you don't know from a standpoint of pushback or guerrilla style warfare what they'd be looking, what kind of headaches would come out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know the FARC, the FARC, and then there's another militarized group in Venezuela, and they control the mines, they control the ports. You know, it's a cartel operated country. And are they going to stand back and not sabotage the drilling efforts? You know, when I was a kid, I worked in the oil field. I don't think they could pay me enough money to show up in Venezuela right now and work on an oil platform. It would be a very dangerous place.
Craig, what are your thoughts?
I don't believe a word of it. I think the CIA planted a story on this poor person who wrote all that garbage. It can't possibly be true. And I don't even know what agenda the crazy story is supposed to support. It makes no sense whatsoever. And if we're worried about drones in Venezuela when the Russians are 200-mile offshore with hypersonic missiles that can wipe us out in 2.5 minutes, I don't think anybody in the Pentagon's got any sense. And I also find it really discouraging, the implication that it's all right with Americans if we went in there to steal their oil. What does that say about Americans? That's hardly a flattering depiction of our population. Oh yeah, we're glad he broke every international law that ever existed and kidnapped the head of state and his wife and bringing them back here for some kind of faked up trial and because we stole the oil. That speaks so badly of Americans. It's just horrific to me. We should be insulted. And it's clear it was the oil. Trump said so at the very beginning. I'm going there to get the oil. It's our oil.
This episode is brought to you by Vaulted, launched by McIlvaney Financial Group. The simplest and most affordable way to own physical gold and silver. Physical gold is the only asset outside of the control of the government and banking system. They can print dollars, but they can't print gold. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to vaulted.blbvux.net/coffeeandamike.
He claims it's our oil because prior to, I think, the middle 70s, it was. We went in there some years ago and stole every national asset the country had. And all the profits from Venezuela's national assets were flowing into the pockets of American oil companies and the New York banks. And the government in the 70s, this is before Hugo Chavez, began the process of taking their own resources back. And Hugo Chavez completed the nationalization of the oil industry. Maduro has nothing to do with it. He didn't nationalize the industry. It happened long before he came to office. So this is just what Trump said. I'm stealing their oil. It's our oil because we sold it a long time ago. Well, this kind of excuse offered as making Americans accept the activity of a totally rogue government that has resulted in world condemnation. If this is true, and Americans are happy that they have a criminal ruling them, but they're happy because he stole somebody's oil, then we're not any longer a civilized nation. We are a rogue that needs to be blockaded, quarantined. I can't think of a worse explanation.
You
You
know, Craig,
know,
Craig, I support you on this because Trump is a businessman. He's a capitalist, and it's interesting. His involvement in Gaza, uh, he promoted it as a business deal, a real estate deal that's going to make everybody wealthy, make us money. He promoted our involvement in the Ukraine, where American companies could come in and mine everything and make money. So Trump does think that way. And so it's pretty reasonable that he would sell Venezuela and even see Venezuela as an opportunity to make money. So that's more consistent with his personality and his track record than the other theory.
and it's consistent with our traditional policy in Latin America. Once again, I recall to you General Smedley Butler, the commander of the U.S. Marine Corps, who said, I
Yeah.
and my Marines in South America are the enforcement mechanisms for the New York banks, the oil companies, and the United Fruit Company. It's, he was speaking in the 20s and 30s. It's always been that way. We've always looted all of these countries, and we've overthrown anybody who tried to represent the people of that country. They're not allowed to do that. I hope you notice that Trump also gave notice to Cuba, Colombia, and Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
He said something has to be done about Mexico. That woman won't listen to me. He said the president of Colombia had better watch his ass.
That's right.
And he said, I'm going to do something about Cuba. So he's declared regime change 3 more times. He's also declared regime change on Iran. This is the peace president. This guy is a dangerous rogue. If what he's done in Venezuela actually threatens any real Chinese, Russian, Iranian interest, we're going to pay a price for that. These are not little tin box countries that he can knock over. We wouldn't last an hour in a war with Russia and China. We have no capability of fighting them. I'm very disturbed by this. It's such a blatant, contemptuous approach, not only to international law, but to American law. We're not permitted to behave like this. I mean, I saw that Dr. Rose called for Trump's impeachment, and Dr. Rose was one of his supporters. I'm confident if Trump loses the midterm elections, he will be impeached and most likely imprisoned. For him to behave in such a reckless, irresponsible way means either he has no awareness of his vulnerability or he's going to have some kind of power seizure that does away with elections. Why else would you take this kind of risk? He's behaved worse than all the people he accuses. This is an extraordinary thing. It's not something that we understand. It's something we totally reject. That's all it can be. I'm ashamed. I'm absolutely ashamed.
Since
You
you
know,
bring
Craig, you're lined up with the New York Times now.
Well, they're aligned with me.
You know, this is going to be an interesting conversation because I'm going to go a little deeper than that. I think what we're witnessing is a paradigm shift in American hegemony. And Trump's talked about it. He realizes that to have our kids in Gaza or the Ukraine, or our kids are everywhere. They're in Africa, you name it. It is an untenable situation, and he has proclaimed the new Monroe Doctrine for our hemisphere. And so we have a paradigm shift happening. That the good news is he's probably going to bring all of our kids and resources back to our hemisphere. And, his first mandate, you and I agree on this, is to protect the American border. Now, Venezuela was a long way from our border, but Mexico is an interesting situation. For 25 years, I lived 1 mile from the Rio Grande River in South Texas. And I witnessed firsthand, this trickle and then this army and then this horde come into our country, and we've all witnessed the disaster that's become. But I'll give you an example. My ranch hand last year was coming back to work, and he was. I got to be careful here. Let me not tell that story now. Think about it. It had to do with paying a fee to the cartel, and actually, I went down to the border with Michael Yan, Mike, your friend, and I was the only one there that spoke Spanish. We had Ann Vander Still and Mike and these three young women had just crossed the Rio Grande River, and we were in the no-go zone. As they approached us, they had three little children, and I was the only one that could speak to them. So I said, where did you come from, and was it difficult? And very quickly, these women just burst into tears. 1/3 of all women that came from the South across the border are raped. She had her husband who lived in Boston. She had his name and phone number written on the white sole of her shoe. And the reason for that was if they were to find her body, they would know who to call. So the cartel, who has brutalized these people, and $5,000 a head to just cross them across the river is an example. And if you don't pay, they kill you. Okay. And then, of course, you have the cartels, and they're the ones that are bringing the fentanyl across. They're the ones bringing the really bad stuff across. And Mexico isn't doing anything about it. That Jewish president of Mexico is terrified of the cartels. So, Craig, let me ask you this: if Trump's job first is to protect this country, to protect it at the border, but you have a massive cartel organization with a government that's terrified of them, allowing this brutality and the drugs and the sex trafficking going on, is it within reason that Trump would cross the border into Mexico and put a stop to it because he can't stop it from here?
Why can't he stop it at our border? Trump's responsibility is to defend our border, not invade Mexico. And it's not really Mexico's responsibility to defend our border. And for the longest time, a very long time, we had 4 years of Biden, 8 years of that idiot Obama. We had Clinton. There was really no border control. Anybody could come in, and not only could anybody come in, but there were a variety of Jewish organizations and USAID funded American NGOs who were recruiting the immigrant invaders and helping them get to the border. The failure is internal. It's an American failure. Trump is trying to do something about it now, but just remember his first term, the Congress wouldn't even let him build a wall. So pretend that it's somebody else's fault is wrong. It's our fault. It's the fault of our government. It's also the fault of our people. There was a survey done at the request of the Manhattan Institute. And it showed that the Republicans are as brainwashed as the woke left-wing left. Oh, you mustn't, it's racist to be against these immigrants. Oh, it's anti-Semitic to criticize Israel for genocide. You mustn't say that. It hurts their feelings and they get upset. Well, this is the attitude of 60% of the Republican Party, according to this survey. The Manhattan Institute is probably the last responsible journalism in the United States.
I read I read the report. It was very interesting.
You may have sent it to me. I don't remember.
I did. It was very interesting. Let's go back to this paradigm shift.
I don't think there is a paradigm shift.
Well, Trump has stated it.
He stated a lot in his 28 points, and the next day he dropped 10 of them.
Yeah.
And what he's also said since then is, with regard to Iran, we are locked and loaded.
Oh, yeah.
And if they hurt one of those protesters, we're going in. Well, look, just like we had no trouble causing gunfire in Kiev in 2014 in the Maidan Revolution, we'll have no trouble causing gunfire in Tehran. That's our protest that's going on.
Sure. Yeah,
That's
right.
American-financed NGOs inside Iran acting against their own people. He can have the gunfire any minute. And he says that's his only excuse.
Yeah, and that's true. That's a little different scenario because that is his obeying Netanyahu. That's his doing Israel's bidding, with the Greater Israel Project that he is unfortunately entrapped in. But this Monroe Doctrine for the Western Hemisphere, I think, is the new paradigm, and I think we have to be thinking about things that way. And it kind of brings us back to Mexico. They are on our border. He has demonstrated with this Venezuelan project he just pulled off that he can command his special forces to go in there and to destroy or to capture somebody. And I think Trump is going to see our hemisphere as his new territory that he's going to exercise control over. And that Manhattan Institute said that 70% of Republicans supported a foreign policy where we achieve peace through strength. So we have a Republican Party that's going to support those kind of actions under this new paradigm, and Trump seems to be committed to it. I think that's 2026 for us. We're going to see him do what he said he's going to do, which is overthrow the government in Cuba and Colombia and certainly Mexico. I think Mexico's next.
You think Mexico's ahead of? You think Mexico's ahead of Cuba, Gary?
Cuba,
because they get the oil. Don't they get oil from Venezuela? I mean, without Venezuela, how are they going to survive?
You're right. Cuba can't function without Venezuelan oil and also Venezuelan financial support. So I think Cuba's going to die on the vine. I think Mexico is his next project because it certainly in the eyes of the public, it's causing the greatest harm to to America. And you know, when 70% of the Republicans think this is all a good idea, he's going to continue to march forward. So, and Craig, I agree with you on, you know, if we didn't subsidize immigration wouldn't exist. But right now we're dealing with Trump's new idea that he has the power to administer the Western Hemisphere. And that does explain why he didn't want Russia and China and Iran to have any presence there.
Gary, look, the Monroe Doctrine we've had since the beginning days of our new country. There's nothing new about it. So there's nothing new in Trump's position. We've been doing this ever since. We've overthrown innumerable governments.
Yeah.
We've overthrown Honduras probably a dozen times. We overthrow every government that elects a leader that represents the people instead of the New York banks and the American mining and oil companies. We overthrow every leader that doesn't let us have an Air Force base in their country. This has been going on all of our life and for 100 years before. And we have it on the authority of the highest decorated officer in American history, General Smedley Butler, the commander of the United States Marines. And so there's nothing new about it.
I agree with that. And by the way, his book, War is a Racket, is a must read for anybody. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that under Obama and well, under all the way back to Bush Jr., they've considered Monroe Doctrine, Iraq and Libya and Syria. I think Trump is narrowing his focus on something he believes is manageable. I think that's the shift. And you know, Craig, the interesting thing was that the American people got no benefit from all that. In John Preston's book, and you and I discussed this book at one point in time. He explained how the bankers would go into these countries. They would loan money that went to the benefit of the elite, and the collateral for the loan were all the hard assets, like the airports and the electrical systems and things like that. And when they couldn't repay the money, then they took possession of those things and then demanded austerity from the people. So it was always the elite that were leading these things. You know, the United Fruit Company and Preston Bush. You know, all the time it was the elite that was using the U.S. military to go in and extract the wealth from these countries. And I suspect that's what's going on right now. Yeah. And Trump is unfortunately beholden to the financial interests like BlackRock. You know, BlackRock was the one going into the Ukraine to rebuild. You know, they've already got their contracts in place. So I think it's more of the same. They're down in Venezuela, and the elite that fund the campaigns, the bankers, are just going to go into Venezuela and extract the resources once again. Yeah, Mike.
Let me ask two things just to wrap up Cuba for a second. You say die on the vine. What does that mean to you? Will it turn into a North Korea, or will people just, without power and support, will they just starve to death?
Well,
or will they overtopple the government?
You know, I've traveled all over the place. Never went to Cuba. I've flown my plane over it a number of times, and I've been to Haiti many times. So I don't have firsthand experience, but I know a lot of people from Cuba, and the poor people there, since really prior to Castro in '59, they were already impoverished and beat up, and so now they've had 70 years almost where they've just become accustomed to communism. That's all they know. So I don't see revolution in Cuba. I see people like whipped dogs laying on the ground getting beat. They're already living on a margin.
Sounds like you're talking about white males in America.
Well, that's true, and you know what? We're doing something about that. We're challenging men to be men.
Yeah, it
There's
won't
hope.
be.
The young generation, and by the way, it was in that Manhattan Institute, how the young men are waking up, and there was some real hopefulness there. All the Republicans under 50 are even talking terms of revolution and violence, which I don't agree with, but at least they're waking up. But anyway, Cuba
Yeah, there was
is going down the vine.
17%. There was 17% of the Republican Party thought it was all right to criticize Israel. And 17% thought of the Republican Party thought that it really shouldn't be that you can't say anything about a black person, but you can demonize a white person. So that's a tiny percentage of the people.
Well, that was the total group.
Yeah.
Over 50, it was like 8%, but under 50, it was like 25, 30%. That was my point. I think there's some hope now. You know, there's so many young men that can't afford to buy a home, can't afford to find a family. They're tired of foreigners coming in, taking their jobs, and so forth.
So why isn't Trump doing something about this? Why is he always focused somewhere else?
Let me read this to you guys.
Because these young men don't have any assets to be stolen because their life has been stolen from them by their own government.
And 50% of them,
they have been ruined by the United States government.
And 50% of them said raising.
I saw the other day Victor Davis Hanson, whatever his name is. He's at Stanford.
Yeah,
said the white male percentage of Stanford's freshman class is 9%.
Yeah.
All right. Where's equality under the law? Where's equal treatment under the law? Do you think white males only represent 9% of the population?
No.
You know, look, I don't believe, let's get off of this. I don't even believe the story of the capture of Maduro and his wife.
That's what I wanted to ask you guys about. So I'm glad you're
I
going
don't
there.
believe a word of it. I think we must have paid tens, hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe billions, to his guards to turn him over. Maybe his pilot flew him out of the country and landed him. The story is preposterous. Try to remember the story about the SEALs that went into the little town in Pakistan and killed bin Laden. You remember that fairy tale? And they took bin Laden's dead body to an aircraft carrier in the Indian Ocean and buried him at sea. Do you remember this fairy tale?
Actually,
You remember they had Obama and all these people sitting in the White House watching intently at a TV, and they said that they were watching it live on TV. When they quickly changed that story because everybody said, let us see the film. There wasn't any film. So they had to change the story. Oh no, they were listening to some. I looked into that extremely carefully. There was a long program on Pakistani national television. They interviewed everybody that lived around the compound that was supposed to be bin Laden's compound. You know whose compound it was? Oh, it's my neighbor. He's in an import food business. We've known him all our life. Oh, yes, the two helicopters came. One of them landed, one went off. They were speaking Pashto, which is a form of Afghan. They weren't speaking English. Absolutely no Navy SEALs know this Afghan dialect. Oh, they went in and they came back out and they got in the helicopter and they lifted off and the helicopter exploded. Everyone was killed. No other helicopter landed. No one left alive. The compound. This was the facts. The guy right next to it, I was on the roof the whole time watching. The whole story was a hoax, a total hoax. Bin Laden had been dead since, I don't know, the fall of 2001. He died in an American military hospital in Pakistan. It was reported all over the world. Even Fox News reported it. And all the stupid Americans fell for the story. You remember when Carter was going to rescue our embassy personnel held hostage when the Iranian Revolution overturned the Shah? Remember that? They sent in the helicopters and all that. And what happened? The helicopters ran into each other and blew themselves up and killed our own troops. The whole thing failed. That's what you can expect from an American operation. You can't expect that into some foreign country comes helicopters and lands on the roof of the presidential palace and grabs the leader and his wife. It's not possible. Of course, Americans love to hear this. Oh, how mighty we are. Oh yeah, come on. Yeah.
Do you think Maduro? Do you think Maduro was in on
Can't
it?
believe stories like this. These stories are, but of course, Americans always fall. Oh yeah, two airplanes knocked down three buildings in the World Trade Center. Oh yeah, these Saudi Arabian kids are so smart, they outwitted all 17 American security agencies, all security agencies of NATO, of Israel's Mossad. They called airport security to fail 4 times the same hour, the same morning. I mean, who can believe this crap? How can we believe anything the government says? They are such absurd tales. We have no idea what happened down there. We never will have.
Yeah. But I agree with you. Maybe not so enthusiastically, though.
Well, I thought the whole.
I just get so sick and tired of it. How can you bring truth to people who are so stupid they fall for the most obvious, blatant fairy tale stories?
Because Craig, people think we're in a superhero movie, and it's Harrison Ford and Jack Ryan, Patriot Games, or Air Force One. People really believe that. I say this over and over again on my show, but they believe
They're
it
stupid people.
because they think this is all going to have a happy ending. That this movie is going to have a happy ending.
Yeah, it's going to have a happy ending when all of our cities disappear off the face of the earth. That's the happy ending it's going to have. You can't, the United States is essentially bankrupt. It has no capability of pushing Russia and China around, and yet it thinks it does. And it keeps pushing. And it keeps pushing, and the Russians keep ignoring it because they don't want to have to go to nuclear war. But at some point, they're going to say this is pointless, and we're going to be gone. Now, that's what our leaders are producing. They're not producing a drug-free America because they're overthrowing Colombia and Cuba and Mexico and Venezuela and whoever else. They're producing recklessness, insanity, They're going to push too far, and it's all going to be over. And Trump is the one to do it. He's no judgment. He has no judgment. This is a serious thing. It is extremely serious. And it's not going to be fixed because he does something in Mexico, Cuba. What has Cuba done to us? Nothing. We say it's communist. Well, we're communists. We've got 43 million Americans living off the workforce. That's communism.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mayor of New York.
It's communism. We have it right here at home. We've just about 43 million. That was the population of Ukraine before the exit from the country and the deaths in the war. So we've got as many Americans as Ukraine had a population, say in 2014, living off a workforce, counting the unemployed members of the workforce, of 170 million. Well, hell, that's between a third and a fourth. The communists are living off the productive, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. Well, that's what we have.
Yeah.
And we now have a communist mayor in New York, a Muslim. Imagine New York, the financial capital of the world, is ruled by a Muslim communist.
That's amazing. He swore.
Amazing. These are the real problems, not Venezuela, Cuba. What the hell is Cuba doing? Nothing. The only reason they're poor is the endless embargoes and punishments we inflict on them. We have made them poor. It's America's fault. They're wretched because of Washington.
That's true.
We got to call it as it is. And I think the United States, it's not going to be long before we're going to be sanctioned. Particularly if this expands to Colombia, Cuba, Mexico, Iran. It remains to be seen what is going to happen if, to please Israel, Trump attacks Iran. It remains to be seen. Just remember, we couldn't beat a few thousand lightly armed Taliban. They kicked us out of the country. We couldn't beat the Vietnamese. They ran us out of the country. Do you think we can go into a large area like Venezuela and Colombia, jungle, and put troops on the ground? They'll have to hide in a city somewhere. You have to be realistic. It's just can't happen. It's not going to happen. We will go in with huge amounts of money and bribe people. That's the way it will happen. You see, when countries don't have a strong sense of nationalist existence, they're easy to overthrow. You just do it with bribes and money. All those people in the streets in Tehran, they've been paid. Remember, in 1953, what happened to the first democratic government ever elected in Iran? We and the British overthrew them. Why? Because they nationalized the Iranian oil company. It was all owned by the British, and the whole wealth of the country was in the bank, in the city, in the banks, in the city of London. They nationalized it, so we went into the streets and started paying people money to go protest, and we overthrew him. And that's the way we do it. It's the same thing we did in Kiev in the Maidan Revolution. Victoria Nuland went on national television and bragged about it. She said, we spent $5 billion hiring our agents in the capital of Ukraine and picking the politicians.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way we operate.
Yeah, it is. And if you look at Venezuela from that perspective, it explains a lot. And it's kind of think about, not only does Venezuela have jungles like Vietnam, but then they've got these urban warfare situations which are impossible to fight in. And then Trump says we're going to run the government down there, but doesn't explain anything about how in the world we're going to do that. It's a mouthful to swallow. Now, Mike, you've been trying to dive in there. What's going on?
Well, I talking about Venezuela, is the military going to comply? Are the people going to comply? Or is this going to turn into an Iraq quagmire, multi-year war?
If they're given enough money, they'll comply. And we've seen that Trump gives money everywhere. He gave $1,700 to the troops. He's going to give everybody $2,000 on a refund of their Social Security payments. He's handing out money to us as well. I think if you got $400,000 income, you don't get it. But if you got $390,000 income, they're going to give you $2,000. Everybody gets this money. This is what they talk about. I mean, it's just they hand out money. And like I say, if there's no ethnic nationalism, there's no such thing as a country. It's just a territory. And the government doesn't represent, or the flag, it doesn't mean anything to the people. It's just something there that taxes them. There's no real strength in the countries. This has been South America's problem forever. There's no strength in the countries. They're run from the outside. And so the people, they probably don't even think of themselves as Venezuelans.
What they're thinking about is, how can I buy enough beans and rice to feed my family this week? And how can I get a job to make any kind of money and then get there without being harmed?
Well, they just want to have fun. They want to have fun. They want to find a woman or something to drink or go dancing, or they're not in the real world.
Well, when there's no hope, I think you tend to try to distract yourself with those things. I've traveled a lot in South America and Central America, and I have a home in Costa Rica. And Costa Rica is really a unique place where there is a rule of law. They do love their kids. There's no drug dealing in Costa Rica because it's not on the path. They go around it. They go to Nicaragua and so forth. It is a remarkable place. Now, if you could remember Venezuela many years ago was a pretty decent place to live, where people were educated. They were able to provide for their kids. But Chavez came in and disrupted things so that Medical doctors could no longer make a living. Uh, Lawyers, the educated class, he disrupted things so badly. It's not going to suddenly become a stable rule of law country with an economic system you can rely on. It's going to take time. I don't think we have any people uh, in our elites, in our leadership, that are able to go in and influence anything, to build anything, any educational, economic infrastructure. So it's probably just going to be a quagmire. Uh, but then again, look at Argentina. Uh, uh, that fellow is actually lowered the rate of inflation substantially. He's reduced the government costs. Are the people, the citizens in Venezuela who've suffered, have they suffered sufficiently to learn a few things about uh, uh, stability and their responsibility to it? Because I think the Argentinians are really coming around in a country that had been the Peronistas and all that misery for 50 years.
Gary, no, Gary, what we did, as best I remember, we created a puppet by buying their national debt.
In Argentina.
Yeah, I think I may be wrong, but I think what we did, he's our puppet. We created, we took control by purchasing their national debt, so they didn't have to redeem it. I may be wrong. There's so many things happen that I see and don't have a time to get into.
Yeah.
May be wrong about that. As for Chavez, what he did, what messed up the system, he took the system away from the elite and gave it to the people. You have to remember, we had a coup against Chavez. We captured him in the capital of Venezuela. The CIA had him. We used the elite to capture him. We had him in the hands, but before we could kill him, the entire population was in the streets. The army was at the door about to exterminate all the embassy Americans, and we had to release him.
I'd forgotten that.
Yeah, well, so the notion that he didn't have any public support,
Mm-hmm.
even after our coup succeeded, in other words, we trapped him and caught him, we had to turn him loose before they killed us because they would not stand for it. So all the doctors and stuff, they were the ones there sucking on the tit. Nothing was going to the people. This is the reason Chavez is demonized. He went against the elites. He was always against them, and he was brave enough to go to the General Assembly and embarrass the hell out of President George W. Bush.
Smell the sulfur.
Yeah, you can still smell the sulfur.
Yeah.
And, you know, the elite control the media. They demonize whoever they want.
Yeah.
They demonize Trump.
Yeah.
Just remember his first term and the 4 years that followed when they have 4 fake criminal indictments of him. And I don't know how many civil cases they had brought. You know,
Hey,
I don't.
Mike, let's let Mike change the subject.
Yeah.
One last thing I want to ask you guys about. I don't know if you're following it, but you know the timing of the Somalian daycares, and then I've been reading about Somaliland, which is being recognized as its own country off of Somalia, and that the goal is to put the Palestinians there. Have you guys seen that?
No.
Yeah, I saw something about that. you see, what the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians is what the Germans was going to do to them. The Germans were going to transfer the Israelis to Madagascar. Hitler kept saying the Jewish question will be settled after the war. And the first plan was to ship them all to Madagascar. And the next plan, after the initial successes of the German invasion of Russia, was no, he was going to ship the Jews to the rump of Russia that he left for Stalin. Russia behind the Urals, he was going to let Stalin keep, and all the Jews from Europe were going there. And so now this is the Israelis. We're going to ship the Palestinians to Somalia.
But it's Somaliland. Somaliland it's a standalone country, I guess. That's where they're going to put them.
Somalia is a country in Africa. We've been interfering down there for so long. Don't you remember the movie they made? The Black Hawk Down, something like that.
But they created an area within Somalia called Somaliland, which is its own country, is where they want to put the Palestinians.
Yeah, well, then that's
yeah.
But they'll get us to pay for it. They don't want to pay for the transportation of a couple of million, or however many are left, of Palestine. So we'll have to pay for it.
Somaliland, you may be mistaking it with Minneapolis, Mike. It's the largest population of Somalis outside of Somalia in the world.
Well, so where I was going with that is the fact that like my feed on X was flooded with all this Somali fraud in Minneapolis. So I don't think that's being done by accident. And are they they want to create this, got to be the good guys, bad guys, right? Superheroes, good guys, bad guys. So, screw Somalia, send the Palestinians there, make Somalia pay for what they've done to the United States. Like, I feel like it's not by accident that the story gets out about all this fraud with these Somali daycares, because this is not new. Yeah. People have known about this for a long time. So why is this story coming out now? And then Somaliland, I hear about that like right on top of each other.
I think the story is coming out now because people at TSA reported that all these Somalis were going through customs, leaving the country with suitcases full of millions of dollars in cash. It's legal if you declare it. Mm-hmm. But there was some of these TSA people, and they said, what's going on? Because they'd never seen anything like this before. And that's what brought to light. It turned out all this money was from scamming the welfare system in Minnesota. And when they started looking at that, they found that there was a whole criminal organization organized for that purpose. And that's how it came out. And it wasn't supposed to. And it is true, Mike, that the governor, the former vice president candidate, knew about it, but he couldn't do anything about it, because if he had tried to do something about it, it would look like he was attacking the poor, because this was a system set up for the poor. And so if you go in and you start talking about fraud, here we have the old Reagan stuff about the welfare queens. It's all fake to take needed assistance away from the poor. So the governor couldn't do anything. He knew the minute he tried to reform it or stop it, the liberal left would accuse him of being against the poor.
And racism.
And racism, yeah.
That was
racist against the poor, and so he just couldn't do anything. It doesn't really mean he was in favor of it. It just And in a way, it helped that the story came out because then he could do something about it, perhaps. I don't know how that story will end up, but I'm sure it's true in many states. And I think I've talked with Gary about this before. All kinds of Americans were getting rich off the illegal immigrants. They had bought up derelict hotels and motels and were being paid by the federal government to house the immigrants in these structures. You had other companies getting rich, providing them with food and transportation, and the whole illegal immigration became a whole collection of privatized businesses serving these people paid for by the government, state or federal. And they were huge businesses.
So,
And this is why they didn't want to do anything about it.
so some good news. When they took a look at the child care fraud that was going on in Minnesota, in the care for autistic kids and the care for uh, uh, feeding. One of them was a food ministry, and they realized there was no way to audit it. These daycare centers, for example, that the sign-in sheets, they were haphazard. You couldn't even read them. And so the federal government a few days ago simply said, we are not going to send any more money to Minnesota. That's the only way we can deal with it. So that's good news. Just stop sending money that you can't account for. Of course, we'd have to close down a Pentagon if we had that rule. Considering the $3 trillion that was missing on 9/10 that year. But that's really, people are waking up that government cannot do anything well, and so rather than try to hold it accountable, you just have government do less and less and less. Back to that Manhattan Institute survey. Republicans over 50 were very high percentage, 75% or so, who said we need to reduce the size of government. But the under 50, 50% of them, in fact, it was 51%, said that they actually wanted government to do more, and they were okay with taxing both middle income as well as wealthy people. So this when you look at the different elements of the Republican Party, which is, if we were to have any hope, that's where it's going to come from. Even our young people who are more sensible about a lot of things, half of them think it's a pretty good idea to raise taxes and let government do more. When we've just had Somali thing is a neat thing to look at because it's so in your face how grossly incompetent government is, and so hopefully more and more people are going to say, become individualists. And by the way, that reminds me of the mayor of New York yesterday. He was sworn in on the Koran by Bernie Sanders, a socialist, actually a communist. And he said that in New York, and this is a paraphrase, there's no longer going to be an individualist culture here. And he said something to the effect of a cold, heartless, individualist culture. We are going to be collectivist. And that was his statement after he was sworn in yesterday on the Quran. So you're going to have these extremes that are going to make people start to think. And Craig and I agree on this. The problem is people don't think well anymore. We had an education system that taught compliance. They taught that intelligence was being able to remember and repeat. and that truth came from authority. And all of these things, these generations that have taught uh, how to think or what to think rather than how to think. And that's the real that's the real tragedy in our country right now. And Craig and I and Mike, I know you do this too. We're trying to get people to think about things, look at the evidence, try to come to a rational conclusion with actionable results. And so, Trump, and I think Trump, I give him about an 80% score. He's really done some kick-ass things. Kennedy, it's been slow, but he's gotten the CDC and the FDA to fire so many of the bought and paid for corrupt people that we were supposed to trust and replace them with the people that are not hijacked or bought and paid by the industry they're supposed to regulate. The border is a trickle now compared to what it was. We've got to remember that we're not going to get everything, and we're not going to get a lot of things fast. So we've got to support Trump, and I don't know that most people know this, but 48% of Americans that voted for the cackling hyena. Imagine her as commander in chief. It's inconceivable for a thinking person. And Trump only won with 51.5%. And so we've got to stand by Trump. Oh, Craig, another interesting thing was you and I talked about this the other day. The America First movement and the Christian Zionism is splitting the MAGA movement right now. I think Venezuela becomes another split that will be taken advantage of to try to divide the MAGA people. Now, the 75% of Republicans that support security through strength, but you've got 25% that are libertarians like me who want to keep our kids at home and guard our borders and leave the rest of the world alone. We now have another divide among the MAGA constituents, and I don't think that's by accident, and I don't think that we can ignore that as well. So, the other day I said, well, we're going to have to just agree to disagree because we have to have Trump there. We have to have control of Congress, or we're going to lose our country. And that was on the Christian Zionist split. And now we have a potential split on Venezuela, and our peace through strength and our stay-at-home factions. They're going to try to separate us now to try to split us so that they can capture the midterms.
Craig?
Well, I think what Gary said is true. I'm not sure I can any longer support Trump, but it doesn't mean I'll try to undermine him. The thing that Gary brought to my attention that's really most important is that many of the changes that we tend to see as positive that Trump initiated come from executive orders, and they're not codified into law, and therefore the next president can cancel them all. And so one reason for sticking with Trump is that these executive orders that have changed a lot of things can be codified into law, because it's harder to change a law than it is for a new president to come in and dismiss all the previous executive orders. So that is a very strong reason that Gary gave for supporting Trump, that the progress that has been good becomes codified, and therefore we're more likely to hold on to it, and it doesn't simply disappear with the next president. And as we all know, not all Republicans make good presidents. You can get any of those rhinos and they'll behave just like a Democrat. And so sticking with Trump in order to get codification of changes, uh, that's a strong case.
You know, Mike Johnson, our Speaker of the House, said last week, this is the year that we're going to codify into law all of these executive orders Trump has signed. And to give you a feel for it, Trump's first year, only 5 laws were passed in Congress. The first year of every president back to George Sr., the average number of laws passed the first year was about 200. So we had virtually no legislation. Now we had the big, beautiful bankruptcy bill, but uh, uh, Johnson says now that they are gearing up to legislate these things so that they become more likely to be permanent. So that's what we're going to see this year, I believe, and they're gearing up for it, and they understand the urgency of it. They've got until next week or two next year when the new Congress is sworn in to get this done, or else we could lose. The border could be reopened. The CDC could start mandating a death shot. I mean, we're in a really scary situation right now, and it's easy to forget how bad it was.
Gary, let me make the point that I agree with you. You're right. And this is important. And so this is what Trump should be focused on, not bullying Venezuela and Cuba and Colombia and Mexico and Iran. He should, because those things will exhaust him, will stop any codification. The Democrats will be against everything. He should be focused on our problems, and he's not. Uh, he has a ring in his nose with Netanyahu's finger in it, and somebody else's ring in his nose about Latin America. And these are not things that are any of our business whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so he should be focused on this, not creating more opposition, both at home and abroad. And it is certainly possible the world is going to get fed up with us. They can easily boycott us. They can stop using dollars. If the world central banks said, we're not holding any more reserves in U.S. Treasury bonds, we would be finished. There'd be no place for our debt to reside. It's this lack of awareness that epitomizes America and the Trump administration. So when Gary says we want the boys home, we want policy home. We want our domestic policy being the function of government. That's the way George Washington and the rest of them said the country was supposed to function. How is it going to do that if we're at war everywhere? Particularly if we lose.
Yeah,
I don't think the world likes the United States anymore.
Well, that is
All this bullying of Denmark about Greenland,
yeah.
These things are upsetting. And it doesn't make us great. It makes us look little.
What about Canada? What about Canada?
It's just another lost country. Why in the world, if Trump took over Canada, he'd be immediately impeached. The entire Canada would vote left-wing Democrat. There's nothing, just imagine the Republicans
That's right.
wouldn't even have enough votes to be in the House or Senate.
Now,
You know,
Alberta, uh,
yeah. I mean, that's the easiest thing I ever heard. I said, well, he wants to exterminate Republican Party. Oh, boy. I mean, anyhow, my view of it is Trump needs to come home and quick and do the things that Gary said, and that should be the focus. It takes tremendous political capital and energy to get an executive order that the Democrats oppose codified into law. And how is he going to do it if he's out embroiled all over the world?
yeah.
For whose purpose? It doesn't serve any American purpose. If Americans want drugs, they're going to get them.
And they're not getting them from Venezuela anyway.
Well, then I'd get them there anyway. And
They get hooked on pharmaceuticals. They
you
can.
remember the San Jose journalist? I think the CIA ended up killing him.
Yep.
They claim he committed suicide. He showed that the main drug running operation was run by the CIA.
Yeah.
And when we went into Afghanistan, the Taliban had suppressed all the drugs, and the CIA revived it.
Yeah.
So yeah, just blaming somebody else. I mean, if the American people are so flimsy that they're going to be dependent on drugs, then they're already history. You can't do anything. If your people are weak, you just can't do anything about it. And they'll get the drugs. In fact, the kinds of drugs now they make it. They can make it themselves.
As I say, but even the pharmaceuticals, they're not interested in stopping any of that.
No. So yeah, let's get Trump home dealing with our problems and quit blaming foreigners and all of that. We have plenty to blame right here, and we need to make an effort to make the other side aware that you can't have a republic if there's no unity, and that multiculturalism is the opposite of unity. There's no such thing as a multicultural country.
Mm-hmm.
It's multicultural, it's a Tower of Babel, not a country. There's no common interest, no common purpose, no common values. Multiculturalism is what destroys nations. It always has. It's never failed to destroy a nation. The Roman Empire is the prime example.
Let me close this with a prediction for you and me. One side note, though, the Europeans seem to be rising up. They seem, and you've written a little bit about it. They're taking their tractors and driving through government buildings and spraying manure on the politicians. The Europeans have, I think, suffered sufficiently now to do what it takes to take their countries back from these globalists that have brought in millions of people that are not that are raping and living on welfare. So there is a little bit of hope there, but here's my prediction for you and me. You and I were outliers during COVID. We were the first to recognize that it certainly came from a lab. We were the first to recognize that the vax didn't keep you from getting COVID, didn't keep you from killing grandma, that it was probably a bioweapon. We were and we were lonely out there, by the way, that's my point. And we were out there with the Christian Zionism, America, we're America firsters. We're still a minority on that. And we're going to be a minority on keeping our kids home from Venezuela and other foreign. I'm feeling like the Maytag repairman now for at least the last 5 years. We're gonna have a lonely year again where we're the outliers, trying to speak truth to power and to people that refuse to think. So I guess I apologize in advance. why, you know, why can't we be the popular kids for a change?
The only way you can be popular is to be a whore.
Craig, any predictions you want to make?
No, I just I remember the old 9th or 10th century Anglo-Saxon poem, The Battle of Malvern Bridge, where the English Earl and his troops are facing the Vikings. And the English Earl tells his troops that as our numbers diminish, our will must grow stronger. So, as far as I'm concerned, you don't need hope to fight. You fight because it's the right thing to do. And as our numbers diminish, our will must grow stronger. Now, if the numbers don't diminish, then the pressure's off. So I hope that all of Gary's signs of optimism are really there and that we experience them and that we can somehow recover despite bad leadership and everything else and get our act back together. Suit me fine. There's nothing that I'd prefer to that. And I'm sure Gary and I and you will continue to make efforts in that direction.
Where can people find you, Gary?
Gary at GaryHeavin.com.
Craig?
It's just my website, paulcraigroberts.org, and they might be interested in my more recent book, The Empire of Lies. You know, once they realize they live in a world of lies, they become more sophisticated. They don't necessarily believe everything that they're told. And that would be a great achievement if we could just get another 5 or 10% of the people thinking. Margaret Mead said that all change in the world has been brought by relatively few, only a few people. And we just need a few more. And let's keep working and try to get a few more.
Where can people get that book, Craig?
I don't know. Amazon, most likely. Okay. I don't know if bookstores exist anymore. But it's just Empire of Lies. And, I'm sure it's on Amazon. Unless it's been banned. I mean, maybe it's been banned.
As always, guys.
It may be after today.
As always, thanks for making yourself available. Happy New Year, and I'm sure it won't be that long before we talk again.
All right. Look forward to it.
See you, Mike.
Mic drop.